My name is Layla West, and I'm the youngest chief of cardiothoracic surgery at St. Jude Hospital. My surgical success rate is 97.3%. I keep count myself because I need to know if every slice of the scalpel saves a life or ends one. My husband, Daniel West, is the vice chairman of our department. Everyone calls us the golden couple of medicine. What they don't know is that the golden boy is pushing the golden girl straight into the abyss. It was Wednesday. After grand rounds, I returned to my office. Nurse Jennifer was waiting at my door.
Dr. West, I want to show you something.
It was a copy of a patient's chart. Margaret Chen, 67, admitted for heart valve disease. Valve replacement by Daniel 3 days ago. Post-op complications, transferred to ICU. I flipped open the chart. The death record read, post-op massive hemorrhage, CPR failed. But Jennifer was the scrub nurse for that surgery. Her signature was right there.
But the count was wrong during surgery. One hemostat was missing. I reported it right after, but the head nurse said it probably fell on the floor. Don't make a fuss. But I saw Dr. West put something into his surgical gown pocket with my own eyes.
Are you sure?
I've been an instrument nurse for 20 years. Every clamp is numbered. That one wasn't on the checklist. Dr. West never put it back.
I leaned back in my chair. Moonlight fell on my desk. Daniel is my husband. If he really stole a hemostat, Margaret Chen's death is no longer an accident. That night, I made Daniel's favorite red wine braised beef. He came home an hour late, smelling of disinfectant.
Thank you for today, Layla.
What went wrong with Margaret Chen's surgery?
Post-op hemorrhage. The cause is still under investigation. The instrument count matched.
He was lying. Jennifer pointed out discrepancies in the inventory count, but he claimed everything matched. It wasn't that he hadn't reviewed the report, he had altered it.
Eat before it gets cold.
He kept cutting his steak, hand perfectly steady. A surgeon's hand never shakes, even when lying. That dinner lasted an hour. I talked about our son Aiden's school play and the new Da Vinci robot at the hospital. He thought everything was normal. He thought his wife was still his wife. Late at night while he snored, I got up silently. His surgical scrubs were empty, but yesterday's lab coat in the laundry basket had dried blood inside the pocket. Not patient seepage, but the brownish red left by a long-carried hemostat wiped with iodine. I swabbed a bit with a cotton tip into a test tube and labeled it Margaret Chen. When I got back to bed, Daniel turned and laid his arm across my waist, heavy as a lead pipe. I didn't move it. At daybreak, I met Jennifer at a cafe near the hospital. She looked even more haggard than yesterday and showed me a video she surreptitiously filmed of the post-op instrument count. The nurses were counting clamps. 1, 2, 3, 1, missing. The head nurse said, sign first, search later. They signed. That signature belonged to Daniel. He wasn't looking for the hemostat. He was hiding it. I started going through Daniel's surgical records from the past year. 10 surgeries, 3 postoperative complications, 1 death. Every record was meticulously written complications attributed to the patient's underlying conditions, but the bleeding points in those photos didn't look like routine suture leaks. I couldn't trust my own judgment, that half-blinded state you enter when someone you know is the suspect. I didn't want to believe it was him, but the evidence kept pushing forward. I pulled up the surveillance. St. Jude's ORs are equipped with panoramic cameras, but the storage only lasts 30 days. Margaret Chen's surgery was on day 28, only 2 days before it would be overwritten. I downloaded the footage using my chief's access, not stolen, signed off on a compliance review form. The reason listed was complex case retrospective study. No one suspected me because I'm Layla West over a decade, and no one has ever questioned me. I spent the whole night watching the footage. The image quality wasn't great, but you could see every person's movements on the operating table. Daniel stood at the lead surgeon position, best angle, camera most centered. The surgery appeared to be going smoothly, until during skin closure, his right hand suddenly hesitated. The clamp hadn't been held steady, the instrument slipped. He glanced down, moved quickly, bent to pick it up, didn't place it back on the instrument table instead, he put it straight into his own pocket. The timestamp on the footage was 4:12 p.m. The post-operative bleeding resuscitation log started at 4:40 p.m. 20 minutes of silence, no one knows what happened in between. I copied the video 4 times. Encrypted hard drive, personal cloud, my lawyer, and Emily's email. Emily isn't a journalist. She was my college roommate, now a medical malpractice lawyer. If the day comes when I need her, she'll receive it first thing. Daniel had started to sense something was off. First, the shirt that should have been in the wash was hung back on the hanger, and in the pocket there was a supermarket receipt, not from our usual store. He hadn't deleted the cashier's name. I recognized that handwriting. Then the phone got a new password, no longer Aiden's birthday. He was guarding against me. But I wasn't investigating an affair. I was investigating murder. Compared to a human life, all that was small. I didn't say a word. I kept working rounds. Surgeries. One afternoon in the surgical cafeteria, Daniel sat down next to me and asked if I'd been under too much pressure lately. He had noticed something, maybe the way I seemed preoccupied. Or maybe it was that I wasn't wearing my wedding ring, lost somewhere by the scrub sink. I searched all morning and eventually found it in the biohazard bin. No scratches on the band, it must have slipped off by accident. But he had seen it.
Leela, if something's bothering you, you can tell me.
Nothing, it's just stuff with Mom.
I brought up my mother as a shield. She lives in a nursing home, mild cognitive impairment. When I go visit, some days she remembers me, some days she doesn't. Daniel nodded and didn't press further. But I knew he wouldn't believe it. Because the way I was reacting right then, it was exactly the same as when he lied. We'd been married for over a decade. We had long since learned to read each other's covers. My mother's condition worsened. She needed to be transferred to a specialized care facility. The social worker called the day I was scrubbing in for surgery, antiseptic still dripping from my hands.
Arrange it first, I'll deal with it after I'm done.
Daniel was in the surgical prep room, too. He heard my voice, changed into scrubs, and came out.
What's wrong with your mom?
It's nothing, I can handle it.
Do you need me to help?
No, it's fine. Go ahead with what you're doing.
He turned and left. The way he closed the door that moment was gentler than usual, as if afraid of disturbing me. I doubted myself. Had I wrongly accused him? Maybe that hemostat was nervousness, not deliberate concealment. But the next image shattered my hesitation. Margaret Chen's daughter posted a video on social media. Her mother didn't survive the transfer from the previous hospital. She was asking anyone who knew the truth to come forward. Someone anonymously posted in the comments. There's surveillance footage from the OR, but it was wiped. The nurses did a count, but it was altered. I knew who posted that comment. It was deleted 10 minutes later. No screenshots, no trace. But I know it existed. The hospital's medical quality committee sent people not to investigate death cases, it was a routine inspection. They randomly selected 3 of Daniel's medical records, including Margaret Chen's. I knew this wasn't a coincidence. The random sampling algorithm was set by the medical affairs director, and that director was Daniel's golf buddy. They wanted to use proper procedures to cover up every improper operation. Just like he'd casually grab my prescription pads in the kitchen to jot down shopping lists. We had no reverence for justice, only exploitation. I had to back up the truth before they destroyed it. I copied more surveillance footage, not just one surgery, but all the cases he'd led over the past 3 months. 7 surgeries, 7 videos. Some had poorer image quality, others had mismatched timestamps. But they all shared one thing in common. His right hand would pause during critical suturing, then he'd hide something in his pocket. I edited the videos into a timeline, piecing them together into a logical chain. First segment, surgery begins, instrument count is normal. Second segment, during surgery, an instrument slips. He picks it up. Third segment, post-surgery, the nurse discovers the shortage during count. Fourth segment, he signs off confirming all accounted for. Fifth segment, the patient is sent to the ICU. Sixth segment, the death record is signed, his signature. I named this timeline Truth. Not for the jury, for the committee. Let them know what kind of doctor they're protecting. The committee meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon in the main conference room. The agenda only listed quarterly medical quality report. My name wasn't on it. But as chief of surgery, I had the right to attend. Daniel had no idea I'd be there. He thought I had specialist clinic. I swapped my shift. Friday morning, I called my mother. The caregiver said she wasn't awake yet, so I left a message that I'd visit tonight. After hanging up, I stood on the balcony for a long time. Spring comes late in Detroit. The branches were still bare. I remembered what my mother told me before she got sick. Layla, marrying a good man is more
I thought
important
she was
than marrying a
old-fashioned
capable
back
one.
then.
I thought she was
Now I
old-fashioned
realize she
back
was
then.
right.
Now I realize
But
she
it's
was
too
right.
late.
But it's too late. I took a seat in the second row of dark brown leather chairs. Daniel sat directly opposite me in the front row. His lawyer came too, a man in a gray suit, wearing a wedding ring, his fingers tapping relentlessly on the tabletop. The head of medical affairs chaired the meeting. First, Daniel was to report the
Let's begin.
mortality case. He stood up and
As you
spoke
can see from this
fluently.
Q3
The slides
analysis,
were
the upward
beautifully
trajectory is
crafted,
not only
with data
consistent but
sources densely
accelerating.
cited. No one could expose him on the spot, because he was just too skilled. When he finished, I raised my hand, requesting permission to speak.
Dr. West, what would you like to add?
I looked straight into Daniel's eyes. He didn't understand yet. I would like to play a video related to this case. The conference room went silent.
This is an internal meeting. Patient privacy law is strictly public broadcast. Patient is deceased. Her family gave me written authorization to investigate. Was I her attending physician? No. But I am the chief of surgery, and I have a duty to know the truth.
Daniel didn't look at me. His fingers were laced together on the table, knuckles bone white. He knew I had something. Maybe he'd known since the day the footage hit its 20-day expiry threshold. His friend in IT had warned him. The chief used his admin access to download the OWA video. He assumed I was studying it for teaching. He didn't know I had pieced the footage together into a single, undeniable timeline. The big screen lit up. Segment 1. The operation begins normally. Segment 2. The instrument slips, and he picks it back up. Segment 3. The nurse counts. 1 forcep missing. Segment 4. His signature marking complete. Segment 5. The ICU footage drainage volume spiking abnormal. Segment 6. The death run. Jennifer was the first to cry. Sitting in the back row, hands over her face, shoulders shaking. Jennifer was the first to cry. Sitting in the back row, hands over her face, shoulders shaking. The tears she'd held back for weeks finally broke. Daniel stood up. He didn't stand to explain. He just wanted to leave. His lawyer grabbed him to hold him back. He ignored him and walked to the door to leave. The conference room door was heavy and shut with a dull thud, just like sterile OR doors. The medical director called the meeting recessed. The committee will retrieve all original footage for investigation. No one spoke a single word to me after the meeting ended. Jennifer walked over and hugged me, whispering, "Thank you," in my ear. "I'm the one who should thank you. You risked your entire career for this." She smiled and said it didn't matter, as long as the patient could rest in peace. I walked out of the meeting room. Daniel's car was still in the parking lot. He sat in the car without turning the engine on, window rolled down, tapping ash onto the ground. He looked up at me with no expression. I wondered if I should go closer, but my feet stayed right in front of his car. At last, he stubbed out the cigarette, started the engine, and drove away. I stood by the spot and suddenly couldn't remember where I parked, just like that hemostat hidden deep in my memory, silent yet always there. The committee investigation was over. Daniel was suspended from practice, pending judicial investigation. The hospital issued rectification measures overnight, revoking all his surgical signing privileges. I waited at home for Daniel to pack his things. He'd called ahead, saying he wanted to see Aiden. Our son was 9. How could he understand what temporary departure meant?
Daddy's going on a long trip.
Where are you going, Daddy?
The hospital sent me on a training assignment out of town.
Daddy, eat candy when you're hungry.
He didn't tell Aiden the truth. Maybe he couldn't bear to. Maybe he didn't dare. I stood in the doorway, and I didn't say goodbye. The car dissolved into the dark, its taillights dimmed amid the rain mist, gone at last.
Will Daddy come back?
I said yes. But the TV in the living room was playing the nightly news reporters live outside the office building where he was taken away. Aiden was still waiting for my answer. I didn't want to lie to him, but I didn't want him to bear all this yet.
You can call Daddy. He needs candy, and he needs to hear your voice.
Things didn't end with Daniel's departure. The media picked up the story with headlines reading, "Saint. Jude Hospital conceals medical malpractice. Lead surgeon suspected of altering records." The hospital announced an independent investigation panel. The Attorney General's office stepped in too, not to help me, but to investigate Daniel's criminal liability. The patient's family hired Emily to file a civil lawsuit. The claim was substantial, but I knew they weren't after money, they wanted the truth. Because Margaret Chen's daughter never reached out to me, she didn't know who Layla was. She only remembered that blue privacy curtain pulled shut by the nurse outside the operating room. She waited 3 days, only to receive the tragic news. I recorded a video statement in my office not for the media, but for all the surgeons who believe that covering up protects their colleagues.
I said, we took an oath. First, do no harm. Our hands are meant to save lives, not to hide forceps.
My wife posted the video online, and the views mounted quickly. Some comments supported me, while others blasted me as a traitor betraying her husband. But I didn't care, because others spoke up for me. Those anonymous nurses, anesthesiologists, and orderlies hidden behind screens, typing out every single word. Aiden walked over holding his pillow, saying he wanted to sleep with me. I pulled back the blanket, and he gently rested his head on my arm. Moonlight filtered through the Venetian blinds, tracing stripes across his face. His eyes were closed, his lips mumbling something.
When will Dad be back?
When you start middle school.
I didn't sleep. I stared at his face, sliced into stripes by the moonlight. His profile looked just like Daniel the eyelashes, the bridge of his nose, the curve of his mouth when he pursed his lips. The hospital board called me in for a meeting. It wasn't to fire me, it was to promote me. The previous chief retired last year, and I have been serving in an acting role. This time, they want me to take the position officially.
Do you think you're up to it?
Yes, I can.
Because I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm here to make sure it never happens again. Your husband's matter won't affect your promotion?
I looked at her. She'd worked in this field for years, her hair was graying, but she still kept herself polished and sharp.
It doesn't. He and I are separate people. He made his mistakes. I'm responsible for my part of the surgery.
She nodded. That same afternoon, the Human Resources Department delivered the new appointment letter. Chief of Surgery, Layla West. The moment I picked up the pen to sign my name, I realized my hand wasn't shaking. The signature pen was new and full of ink. Daniel's lawyer filed for bail. He was granted house arrest. Ankle monitor, no practicing medicine, no contact with prosecution witnesses. I got the call while picking up Aiden from school.
Leia, let me come home. Aiden misses me.
Okay. You follow the law. No going out. No alcohol. No potions.
I agree to all of it.
He didn't know anything. He only knew that Dad hadn't been home for a long time. That evening, he came home, in casual clothes, no white coat. He stood in the living room like a traveler returned from a long journey, except his hands were empty.
Dad, I got an A+ in math.
That's great.
That smile was too brief. So brief I couldn't tell if it was real. Maybe it was. Maybe he really did miss his son. We skirted around the one topic we should have discussed, like walking around a piece of furniture in the living room that no one wanted to touch. Dinner was quiet. Aiden talked a lot about school. Neither of us brought up the subject. Before bed, he went to the guest room. I didn't know if he didn't dare or couldn't face it. The light went off. He didn't come over. I didn't go either. This was the first real separation since we got married, under the same roof. Jennifer was named Nurse of the Year. I presented her the award. She cried at the ceremony, not because of the honor, because for 2 months she hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that patient on the operating table. She thought she'd be fired, reassigned, ostracized, but her colleagues covered her desk in sticky notes that read, "You did the right thing." She tucked those notes into a drawer, said she'd read them again when she retired.
Dr. Layla, I'll keep being a nurse because there are more patients near me. I know. Go ahead.
There were still many people waiting at the nursing station. A few days later, I started pushing for surgical monitoring reform, not adding more cameras, adding transparency. All surgical recordings would auto-upload to the cloud, retention extended to 1 year. Accessing records would require ethics committee approval.
This is about distrust.
Trust what? After all these years, haven't enough? We don't have a trust crisis, we have a crisis. Without trust,
The vote was held during the regular medical affairs meeting. 15 department chiefs were present. 11 voted in favor, 2 abstained, and 2 voted against. The most vocal opponent was Tom, chief of orthopedics and a close friend of my father's. He slammed his fist on the table and said,
"Surgeons are not suspects!"
I stared at his hands that had spent a lifetime in surgery, with thick knuckles and calluses at the base of his thumbs.
Dr. Tom, do you remember that nurse from John Swan's office? She reported a colleague and got fired. An investigation later proved she was right, but the patient was already dead. Our operating rooms must not become graves for secrets.
He fell silent. One of the 2 abstentions was his. It wasn't a win, but it wasn't a loss either. But as long as the reform can move forward, I'm satisfied. After the meeting, I got a text from an unknown number. Dr. Layla, this is Margaret Chen's daughter. Thank you for everything you did for my mom. Her death wasn't for nothing. I didn't reply. I held my phone and stared at it for a long time. Outside the window, the setting sun sank behind the city skyline. Daniel's case has moved to the preliminary hearing stage. His lawyer urged him to plead guilty in exchange for a lighter sentence. He refused.
A hemostat can't kill someone.
We sat across from each other at our kitchen table. He'd lost so much weight, his eyes were hollow, and the ankle monitor was tucked under his pant leg.
The death record says postoperative hemorrhage. The forceps nicked the pericardium, causing delayed bleeding. It wasn't your intention, but it's the consequence.
He went quiet.
You know what I hate most about you? Not that you hid the forceps, but that you altered the medical records afterward.
Layla, if you were the lead surgeon, wouldn't you hide it?
Daniel lifted his head and looked me in the eye. I thought about it for a moment.
No. I would admit it. Then ask for the family's forgiveness.
He smiled bitterly.
You're still the top student from med school. You'll never know the pressure of being second.
It was the first time he'd ever voiced what had been weighing on him. I froze. All these years, I thought he was just competitive. I never realized he saw being second as his fate. But fate is no excuse for hurting someone. Emily, Margaret Chen's daughter, asked to meet me at a small cafe. She was much younger than me. No makeup, her eyes swollen. She held a hot latte, untouched.
Mom used to love lattes. She said bitter coffee was too much like life, adding milk made it easier.
Emily smiled, a very brief smile.
I didn't perform your mother's surgery, but I will do my best to uncover the truth.
She nodded. There was a long silence.
Dr. West, will you forgive your husband?
I set down my coffee cup.
Forgiving him is not up to me. Would your mother forgive him?
Emily dabbed at her tears.
My mom never hated anyone. She believed in Buddhism, said hatred was suffering. But the law isn't scripture. Wrongdoing has consequences.
The latte went cold, and she never drank it. The wind chime at the door tinkled. An old lady with white hair walked in. Her back looked just like Margaret Chen. I didn't dare look longer. Afraid if I stared, she'd really walk in. The trial began. I testified as a witness. Emily and her family sat in the gallery, along with Jennifer and several nurses. I wore a black suit, my hair pulled up, with very light makeup.
Dr. West, will your relationship with your husband affect your testimony?
I looked at Daniel. His hair had turned much grayer, and he was looking back at me.
No, I am a doctor. I don't bring operating room emotions into a courtroom.
I replayed the timeline of the surgery footage. The courtroom fell almost silent. The hum of the air conditioner sounded like the low drone in an operating room.
The defense questions the authenticity of this footage. There are clear signs of editing.
The prosecution can provide blockchain certification to prove the video has not been altered.
They didn't expect that when I copied the footage, I uploaded the hash to the blockchain. It was the only precaution I took. That night after I did it, I told Aiden his toy rabbit might get lost, and Mommy had taken photos of it.
Why, Mommy?
Because there are bad people.
He didn't understand, and I didn't explain further. Daniel was finally sentenced to 2 years with 1 year probation. His medical license was revoked permanently. He never lifted his head throughout the judge's verdict. Someone was weeping quietly in the gallery. It was unclear if it was family or a colleague. Emily took my hand. Her hand was ice cold. She whispered softly, "Thank you." As we left the courtroom, sunlight blazed outside. Daniel was led the other way by bailiffs. We were separated by corridors. No goodbyes were exchanged. Reporters had set up cameras outside and swarmed forward for interviews.
Emily was also there, and she squeezed to the front.
Dr. West, what are your plans next?
I stopped in my tracks and looked toward the cameras.
Keep operating. Reform the operating rooms. Make every surgery traceable.
The panoramic camera upgrade project in the operating room has begun. It's funded by the hospital budget, no charity donations, no patient charges. It's the hospital's own decision. Some doctors are talking in private, saying this is all Layla's personal show. But on the day of signing, the dean said one thing.
She's not putting on a show. She's saving our brand.
Sometimes brand speaks louder than conscience, but I don't care. Because with these cameras installed, the next Margaret Chen won't die without a clear answer. Daniel moved in with his parents temporarily. Aiden visits every weekend, but at first he refused.
Why?
Daddy's not a good man anymore.
He's made mistakes, but he's still your daddy. Fixing his mistakes isn't our job.
Mommy, will you still Daddy?
I don't know. I'm going to lie self first.
He drew a heart on the back of my hand with his finger. No color, just the outline. The lines were so faint. Gone almost as soon as it was drawn. Emily started a medical charity fund named after her mother and asked me to be a consultant. I said yes, no pay, because every day her mother waited for truth. Someone else is waiting too. The first grant went to another family. The patient had a similar accident during surgery. Hidden by the surgeon for 2 years, the family only learned the truth after seeing my story. Emily cried on the phone for a long time. I hung up and walked into the operating room. I stood at the table waiting for frozen section results. Those few minutes felt like years. I held the consent form the family had signed. Thin paper, but heavy as stone. The weight of a life, it sits right in the palm of a surgeon's hand. Jennifer was promoted to head nurse of the operating room, and the first thing she did upon taking office was revise the instrument counting procedures. Dual person verification, electronic signature, real-time uploading. Do not leave the operating room after surgery until all instruments have been put back in place. When she told me about this plan, her eyes sparkled with light, the kind of light that showed she was no longer timid.
Keep it up. We're going to see more and more nurses like you.
Dr. Layla, I have one more request. As the patient's family member,
You say.
I want to go to the cemetery to pay a visit.
I put down the pen in my hand. Go ahead. Bring a bouquet of flowers for me, too. Her back was upright and resolute. Daniel's probation period had ended. He was completely barred from practicing medicine, and he didn't want to do any other work. He would stare blankly at home, watch TV, and wait for Aiden to come home from school.
Layla, can I volunteer at the hospital? I won't have contact with patients or medical records. Ella only help move equipment and do cleaning work.
I looked at him. Do you really want to?
I don't want to ruin myself.
And the next day, I went to ask the dean. The dean said a psychological evaluation was required. He passed it, and he was allowed to come. But he could not enter clinical areas. He helped push wheelchairs in the rehabilitation department, pushing 5 or 6 a day. He didn't complain, and no one said they recognized him. Once, I saw him pushing an old lady down the corridor for a checkup. He walks very slowly, and the hospital bed is very stable. The old lady's sheet had her name written on it, Margaret. It wasn't the same person, but Daniel's hand faltered, just for a split second. Then he kept moving forward. I saw him pass by the hallway from the ward. He didn't see me, and I didn't call him. That long corridor, the gurney wheels rolling over the rubber floor made a faint whistling sound. I couldn't tell if it was the wind crying or someone sighing. The narrow corridor felt like an endless tunnel, and I watched his back fade further and further away. My mom passed away in the nursing home. The caregiver said she went peacefully, like she was just falling asleep. When I got there, the nurse was removing the ECG leads. There were faint red marks from the electrodes on her wrist. I pressed my ear against her chest, no heartbeat, but she was still warm. Daniel and Aiden were sitting on the chair at the end of the hallway. Aiden was holding his backpack, and Daniel was holding Aiden's hand. I walked up to them, and Aiden stood up and hugged me.
Mom, did Grandma go to heaven? Maybe she can be neighbors with Margaret Chen.
Daniel looked into my eyes, not sure if he understood. But those names didn't matter anymore. The chapters after they left should have been turned long ago. Standing at my mother's funeral, I met Emily, Margaret's daughter. She had no idea about my mother's passing until her assistant broke the news to her earlier that day. She brought an elegant bouquet of pure white lilies.
Dr. Leela, your mother would be proud of you.
By the time Mother drew near the end of her life, she could barely recognize me. She only called me by that unfamiliar title, Dr. Layla, even through all the quiet days we spent side by side at the nursing home. In the distance, Daniel stood silently beneath a rain-drenched crimson maple tree, his feet rooted to the muddy path, never stepping forward to offer me any comfort. Between us lie 10 long years of marriage, 2 grueling years of bitter, never-ending lawsuits, and an unhealed rift that can never be fully smoothed out. Today, at this annual board briefing, I stood before you and spoke up about a truth I've buried deep inside for years. In the operating room, what we lack is never just surveillance cameras. What we truly lack is vigilance, people who stay awake, who stay present in the most critical seconds. We don't need someone who hunts for a missing clamp after it's already gone. We need someone who sees it slipping, who catches the risk the very second it leaves the sterile table, and who has the courage to say, stop. When I finished speaking, the room fell completely silent. It was only after several long seconds that applause slowly began to rise. I stepped off the stage, my hands still trembling. Not from nervousness, but from a quiet, clear awareness that next time, we may not be this lucky. This fragile safety net held together only because I met a nurse who dared to speak up, a director who dared to dig deeper, and most of all, a version of myself who refused to stay silent. Daniel sent me a message. This is how we talk now. Short, polite. He reminded me it's getting cold, to dress Aiden warmer. I typed back 2 words. Got it. Like one extra word would cross a line. A moment later, he sent another. You too. I looked at those 2 words, didn't reply. Didn't know what to say, didn't feel like figuring it out. That night, Aiden kicked off the blanket again. He's always like that, restless once he's asleep. I got up and went over. Leaned down, pulled the blanket up to his shoulders. He didn't wake, breathing steady. When he sleeps, he looks more and more like his father. I stood there a while, didn't move. No moon outside, just the streetlight, casting a few thin shadows. The house was quiet. At the end of the year, the hospital office told me our team had won a Medical Quality and Safety Award. It wasn't given to me alone. It was given to all of us. The award ceremony was in the multipurpose hall. No red carpet, no champagne. Jennifer went up to accept the award for all of us. 20 years as a scrub nurse.
Thank you to every nurse who, no matter how busy or exhausted, still carefully signs their name on the count sheet.
The count sheet. Every instrument that goes in and comes out of the surgical field gets recorded. You sign it, you take the responsibility.
That lightest ballpoint pen writes down a heavy trust from the patient.
I stood below the stage. My name was on that award, but I didn't want to go up. Aiden came too. I hadn't planned to bring him. He said he wanted to see where Mom worked.
Mom, why don't you go up?
Today's podium belongs to the nurses. He understood. He always understands faster than I think he will. He started clapping. Not out of manners, but hard, 1 clap at a time. His hands were red from clapping, and he kept going. Daniel's volunteer contract at the rehabilitation department expired. The hospital didn't renew it. It wasn't that he did a bad job. The position was eliminated due to policy changes. The day he was packing up, I happened to pass by.
It's okay. I couldn't help much anyway.
Not because he was slouching, it was the lack of that stiff white coat. He looked a whole layer thinner. I didn't say anything. He walked away with a cloth bag, his silhouette looking smaller than before. He still lived at his parents' house, occasionally picking up Aiden. Sometimes we'd exchange a few words at the door about his homework, his health, or sometimes just a single sentence.
Drive safe.
He said okay, then started the car, backed out of the driveway. His taillights flickered as he turned at the corner. I'd stand there watching for a few seconds, until the car disappeared into the darkness at the end of the street.
We require all surgical videos to be retained for no less than 1 year and shall not be deleted without the patient's consent.
The bill was approved by a large majority of 87 to 12.
The first slice is for you. Is it sweet?
Sweet. This is the taste of life, which no decree can bestow. Aiden has started middle school. His first words were,
Mom, Let's move out of this house.
I was silent for a long time.
Because the neighbors all know about Dad. Mom, I don't want to be recognized.
I've been looking at listings on the agency website for a week, but I haven't found a single one I like. It's not that the house is bad. It's that I can't bear to part with a maple tree in the backyard. Every autumn, when the leaves are the reddest, he's still at home, and I lean against the kitchen door frame watching them. That's something I want to hold on to in my heart, weighing it against the weight of the truth. I didn't move. I just put up a new nameplate on the door that says Dr. Layla West, without the family suffix anymore. Aiden was stunned for a moment. It used to say, with Daniel there, which I gently sanded off with fine sandpaper. The exposed wood was a pale color, old and new mixed together. Which he didn't really understand. Someday, when he does, he'll ask me. I've got the answer ready. Mom doesn't hate Dad, but some marks need to be wiped away. This afternoon, the hospital notified me about a new surgical robot. They invited me to be the lead surgeon. I signed this surgical robot trial agreement, firmly and without the slightest hesitation. This surgical robot is fitted with 4 high-precision robotic arms. This spherical 3D camera captures a view far clearer and more precise than the human eye. Times change, tools change, but the purpose remains the same. Daniel once told me, machines will never replace surgeons because machines cannot lie. After everything that transpired, he'd never speak those words with such certainty again. I walk into the operating room. The shadowless lights are still off. The camera points silently at the operating table. I know it will record my every move, every second. Not surveillance, but witness. My name is Layla West. I'm a surgeon. I've sewn up many wounds and torn open some truths. Sewing those up is to let them heal. Tearing these open is so they never get hurt again.